Or bring your ideas to life with Microsoft 365. Shop online today or safely in store today at Harvey Norman, your technology specialists.
Go!
Wednesday Night Rugby on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. Team of us. Everyone in.
Now you're welcome along to Wednesday Night Rugby. Very happy to welcome Mr. Andy Dunne, who is a regular pundit. We have bullied you, coerced you into giving a career interview chat. Andy Dunne, how you doing?
I'm doing very well, thanks, Joe. Nice to be back. Not quite sure why you want to do a career interview, but...
Well, I know JP was on to you and said he wanted to. We were going to talk to you about your career, and you weren't quite sure if we wanted to talk to you about your career in physical therapy with Personal Health, which is your clinic in Rathmines, or your rugby career. And he said rugby career, and I understand you sent back emojis of laughing, crying face at the ridiculousness of that thought.
Well, it's a long while ago. It's hardly current. It's finished 11 seasons ago. So. You're digging up a bit of old history, so.
Well, here's the point. I don't know much about your career. I haven't even talked to you about it off air in very much detail at any stage, because I remember where I first encountered you was when we might as well be truthful with each other here. This is a truth and reconciliation situation with me and you. So,
like it is.
Yeah, let's just do it like it is. And we had a Heineken Champions Cup game, and there was a late dropout on co-commentary duty, and Dave McIntyre was frantically trying to find somebody, and last minute, he said Andy Dunne, and I was like, Andy Dunne, yeah. And I'd be lying if I said I saw a lot of your career. You know, that would be just a total lie. And then, whoom, you jump in and do a sterling job as a pundit, and you know the people go wild, and you're with us ever since. But so that is half the thing here. So I know Leinster 01 to 03. 11 appearances. I know I want to get behind the numbers. Leinster 01 to 03, 11 appearances. Harlequins 03 to 05, 56 appearances. And I know you did kick the winning kick in the Challenge Cup final. Back to Leinster for a season, and then Connacht 07 to 10. And then you retire going on 30. And just like that, a 10-year career shoots by. So to go behind the numbers a little bit, what I do certainly know is that in school in particular, you were regarded as a very serious prospect. There was every belief when you were 15 or 16 in Belvedere, I think, that there was a very good chance you would be the Irish number 10 for a certain period of time. Was that how you saw things? Did you regard yourself as a pretty serious prospect and operating at that level, hopefully?
I think when I left school, I did, which actually was an issue. I thought myself slightly too much of a prospect. When you're young and innocent, and I probably still am to a degree, and a bit naive, even though I've turned 40. But at 15, 16, 17, I was hugely, hugely driven. And my work ethic was through the roof. And my goal at that stage was to get on the Irish under-18s and the Irish school side. And I did. And I played with Paul O'Connell and O'Driscoll and lots of great players, Darcy, Donica O'Callaghan, lots of fellas who went on and really, really kind of their career went into the stratosphere in terms of how they represented Ireland over a long period. I think when I got to that point at 18, ironically, I had some private sense of achievement and satisfaction that I thought I had arrived. I'd proven my worth, and that actually at 19, 20, I didn't need to continue to prove myself because I'd already, in my own mind now, mistakenly felt, well, why isn't everyone making more of a fuss about me? You know, when I got out of school, you're in the big bad world. I actually went into training straight away, actually, with Leinster. Darcy was given a contract almost straight out of school. We were on the same team in the same year. And Darcy got a contract, got a great try away in Clonettley Scarlets. Only a couple of months after finishing the Leaving Cert, and that doesn't happen a whole lot anymore, fellas going straight into the Leinster squad. And then I was asked to go in straight away to the Leinster squad. And actually, with UCD at the time, a couple of people were advising me I was still a bit small physically, and they would have probably been right. So I actually held off. Mike Ruddock was keen for me to join. I suppose one thing people mightn't know about, well, lots of things people won't be aware about my career because it is a while ago, but I got an offer to go to Stade Francais about a month later, an actual contract offer, which I didn't take. And I'm still not sure if I regret that or not. Diego Dominguez, who was a legend of the game and an out half, was and someone I looked at really with great admiration, was the starting 10 in Stade Francais, and John Connolly was their coach. And I'd come across John Connolly quite a bit at underage level. He was an Australian coach, and he coached in the All-Ireland League. He coached all Belvedere, so he would have known of me coming through the school system in Belvedere College. So he was very Australian, Southern Hemisphere mentality. If you're good enough, you're old enough. And he didn't care that I was about 9.5 stone, wringing wet. And he just wanted to throw me in, and sink or swim mentality. But again, I suppose I spoke to people who had, at the time, physically my best interest at heart, and my own development. They had my best interest at heart. And they said it's probably not the wisest move at 18.5 to just move to Paris and play, absolutely in with a view to going to back up and be a support to Dominguez, but to learn from him. So that didn't happen because I turned it down. So things could have been a slightly different, very different career had, for example, I'd gone to Paris and not sank, but I didn't go. So that was an initial turning point or fork in the road. So yeah, I went into that Leinster squad with a mix of, I think, a little bit of arrogance because the likes of Stade Francais had offered me a contract. I had also then somehow decided that it wasn't right for me to go into Leinster, but went in the following year. And in my own mind, when I reflect, I think there was a sense in my own naivety that I had arrived into the Leinster squad and therefore was going to get very close to starting on the team without having to maybe work as hard, ironically, as hard as I was working all through my teens. So yeah, that did affect me a little bit arriving into the squad. I don't think I had a bad attitude in terms of my outwardly how I projected things. I was got on well with the lads and the team and the coaches, and I worked reasonably hard, but I think I could have worked a lot harder,
It's interesting that you were in the same vintage coming through as Gordon Darcy, because he would say the same thing of his initial couple of years at Leinster. It was far from professional, the general setup. You were probably left to your own devices a touch. He missed out on the World Cup. He took his foot off the gas to such an extent, and that was the kick up the backside that he needed. So it's not shocking maybe to hear that was allowed to happen in a way it wouldn't be today. If I jump in at your second season, for instance, because I saw Peter O'Reilly picked out this game in the Sunday Times. So your second season at Leinster, Scarlets away, Warren Gatland is in the crowd. You have a sensational game by all accounts. I didn't see it, but an incredibly good game alongside Brian O'Driscoll and others. Scarlets undone is the headline in the local paper over in Wales. So, you could have had that should have been your go-to headline.
And the Western Mail, the next
the Western Mail. Okay, don't lie. It's up on your mirror still. Let's be honest. And Gatlin invited you in, I think, to train with the Irish squad. So that's in your second season with Leinster, sometime around 02 or so. Is that when that sounds like, okay, maybe you're not working as hard as you could have, or as driven as the schoolboy Andy Dunne? But that sounds like you've navigated a few bits and bobs and you're doing okay. Is it then that injury starts to kick in?
A little bit, yeah. I think that Clonettley game was, in my mind, over a 10-year professional career, that was the best 80 minutes I put together as an individual. But it's also one of the better games I put together as a director of the team strategy on the field. And it all fell into place. Sports people often talk about being in the zone and how vague that can sound, but it's as if in those moments everything is making sense. Everything's falling into place. Everything you touch is working. And I remember I was kicking off both feet. I'd got a drop goal from a really almost from the touchline, a really odd angle. I'd made a lot of line breaks, and I was also playing against Stephen Jones, who was a British Lion and Welsh international, and very much had left him in my wake. So this sense of I'm a precocious young talent, I've arrived. That didn't go away after that game. That's cemented in my mindset. I remember turning up to training on the following Monday, and the team was announced to play, I think, Swansea on the Tuesday, and I was dropped. And I was completely flummoxed. And again, it comes down to individual hardness, or how hard my outer shell was. I think it comes down to leadership in the group, that at the time nobody, not a sinner on the squad came over and said, all right, look, but that's individual leadership. And Leinster at that stage was a very different place to how it is now. Similarly, nobody came over and gave me a kick up the arse, and nobody came over and said, well done, and nobody told me I wasn't picked. So you were kind of much the same as Gordon Darcy had slipped off and maybe not made the 99 World Cup. There was just a general silence to everything. So I tried to work things out for myself, and I felt a bit hard done by having, the game was on BBC and BBC Wales, and I got man of the match, and then you're dropped. But the only reason I was dropped in hindsight was the team was rotating and was early in the season, and I probably didn't react as professionally as I should, but I wasn't really a professional, and half of the team, I would say, weren't really professional in their mindset at that stage. So that definitely affected me, and probably affected my attention to detail or my drive in training, because I felt a bit hard done by as a young, talented player can if he's not communicated effectively with. So that took a little bit of a wind out of my sails, but I did continue and play a few more good games. I think we had a great game over against Bridgend, and that was a great Leinster side that had the likes of Emmett Byrne, Trevor Brennan, Peter Coyle, Mallow Kelly, Liam Toland. We had Shane Horgan playing that day. Lots of Dennis Hickey. Very, very good side, and we beaten Bridgend. And I think I took my first serious injury a couple of weeks after that. Then I got a kind of an ankle ligament rupture, which required surgery. So that, unfortunately, was a bit of a chain of events. Then I spent the best part of the next 2 seasons really in and out of hospital getting surgeries. I got back. I was out for most of the rest of that season. The inaugural Celtic League win by Leinster against Munster in Lansdowne Road, I missed that final. I got injured about 2 weeks before. I would have been substitute to Nathan Spooner, who was a brilliant bloke, brilliant professional, and I was learning all the time from him. He'd come in from Australia. Matt Williams had brought him in. He was at the time he was the incumbent Australian out half, and I suppose he effectively gave that up to move up to the Northern Hemisphere. That a lot of fellas did at that stage to improve their take home. He would have earned a lot more money up in the Northern Hemisphere. So yeah, I learned from him, but then I got the injuries, and I was out rest of that season. When I got back the following season, I dislocated my shoulder. I think second game of the year up in Peebles up in Scotland, and surgery again. Things weren't as evolved medically. I think Rob Henshaw got back in 11 weeks from a similar surgery last 2 years. It took me about 4 or 5 months. So that was the best part of that season written off. So you get timing matters a lot in sport, injury, luck, form, who you're surrounded by, your managers, your leaders, and most importantly, how you react to things yourself. And I think there was an element of self-pity, and there was an element of anger, and an element of drive to prove myself, all rolled into one at a very young age. So
yes, which I can understand if you're the hotshot number 10 in school and you're making the international side, and Stade Francais are giving you a contract at the age of 18, and Leinster wants you as well, and you put in some good performances. Warren Gatlin sees you come train with the Irish team. I can see how if 2-3 years then if it doesn't happen for you, you can find yourself in a pretty messy place.
Well, we had Matt Williams had some absolutely hilarious inputs, but he didn't mean to be, I don't think. But when we reflect on the team at the time, he'd some great anecdotes, he'd some stories. He was a great man for, I suppose, trying to illustrate his point through story. But he did do a very, at the time, probably felt a bit controversial. I think around in my second, third season, he asked every player to have a blank sheet. We all put it down on a desk or a table in the training camp with our name at the top, and every other player had free range to write a comment about you, and they could choose to initial it, they could choose to be anonymous, they could choose to be or identify themselves, and most fellas identified themselves. And I got a really nice complimentary sheet, except Keith Gleeson, who was an incredibly driven workhorse of an open side, and his dedication in training, he almost isolated himself from the squad by how disciplined he was. And at a time when a lot of the Leinster squad were not very disciplined, there was a good time Charlie type mentality about a lot of the team. There was a lot of socialising, there was a lot of boozing, there was a lot of late nights, and training ethos wasn't that great in the group. And Keith seemed to set a standard that was very separate. But I always remember he wrote, "You've got all the talent in the world, but something along the lines of, you'll never make it as long as your attitude towards work stays the way it is now." And that really, I probably took, and he signed it fully signed it, and I took it as a slight. But I'd say it took me 4 or 5 years longer to let it sink in and realise he was bang on the money.
Come here, I have to stop you here, right? Without blowing smoke, you're one of the smartest people I talk to on a regular basis that we have in here. Articulate, you're like a free thinker and brilliant. How are you so thick at 23?
Good question. I think a lot of things went my way in the world of rugby, and my first taste of disappointment and injury and non-selection and loss of form and not being the lead guy, not having the team centred around me, I didn't know how to react. I'd never been in it before. So the talent hadn't deserted me. The work ethic had a little, but then in patches I would do something very good. And to me, I felt, well, I've proved myself. Why won't I get a shot next week? But sure, you have to be doing it week in, week out, probably going unnoticed for weeks on end, and showing the coach, you need to put your trust in me. And I was a little bit in and out. And
it's so jarring to hear that now, because if you listen to the young Irish player or the young Leinster player now, they're like pre-programmed. It's like like robotic in terms of like, next game, I've done nothing, Grand Slam, put it behind me.
Yeah.
It's almost jarring to hear someone talk the way you're talking.
Well, they do amaze me. The first time I really saw it was when I'd been over to England. I'd had a great time there, and I ended up coming back for lots of different reasons. But I came back to Leinster in 06-07, and Luke Fitzgerald was just out of school and 18. And he seemed to know exactly what to say at the right time in a group session, in a training session with the coaches. On the media was really picking up its coverage at that stage and gaining momentum of rugby. And I couldn't quite fathom how an 18-year-old seemed to have the wherewithal he had just arrived in, and where was his five-year learning curve that I hadn't seen. But the game really wasn't professional around 98, 99. It was people were being paid. But, Leinster lads were training, they were getting Mars bars on the side of the field to fuel up, they were actually putting on weight while training, which is quite hard to do. But with 3 Mars bars in a fitness session, kind of counts it out. But so there was a lot to learn for everyone.
No, I do accept it's such a different world. We're talking here to Andy Dunne, who's our guest on Wednesday Night Rugby, as opposed to our pundit. You're our guest this evening. Our rugby coverage is with thanks to
very indulgent. Yes.
Vodafone #Team of Us, everyone in as usual. So I know you went to Quins and won the Challenge Cup at the age of 24 and kicked the winning penalty in that, and you're coming under, I suppose, the influence of the likes of Will Greenwood. We did a little chat with him, and that's bound to be a good influence, and Jason Leonard. Although I seem to remember as well there were lots of donuts eaten, and I'm sure it wasn't perfect professionalism. No. But so you win the Challenge Cup at 24. Things are moving for you a little bit. You say you come back to Leinster for a season. Do you get to a point from, you know, Quins between 03 and 05, back to Leinster for a season, 06 to 07, and then on to Connacht 07 to 10. Do you get to a point where you start to knuckle down, understand what it takes to be a pro, and get a run and play what you feel is your best rugby, or give an account of the player that you kind of had hoped you would be?
No, there's a really interesting little mid story in the middle. So,
sure.
So the second year with Quins, having won the Challenge Cup, Quins fell foul of, I think, their own ambition. They got rid of 13 of that squad. We won the Challenge Cup, and it's interesting. I'm looking at the Last Dance at the moment on Netflix, and the whole Jerry Krause trying to change the Chicago Bulls while they're successful. You know, this is going to be their last game.
Are you Jordan? Is that what who are you?
Yeah, but no, it's interesting why teams or franchises, you know, some teams get very stagnant and try to, I suppose, wring out that J cloth and get the very, very last bit out of their players, and they become an aged team.
Yeah.
And in the case of Harlequins, Harlequins hadn't had a season like that for about 6 seasons. We won a Challenge Cup. We finished 4th in the Premiership, and they got rid of 13 in the squad. They basically took out the bones of that squad.
Right.
And they didn't replace them smartly. In fact, they brought in quite a few duds, a couple of lads from Championship, and apparently it wasn't financial, it was just the coaching staff recruitment kind of bit awry. But Quins nosedived in that second season and ended up getting relegated. Now I played up until January of that season, and actually played my last game for Quins was in January against Munster in a full house in Twickenham, and Rob Henderson steamrolled me about 20 minutes into the game off a line out. I think Raj fed Rob Henderson, and he just steamrolled me and actually broke my foot. And there was no foul play. But I was so keen to just stay on the field because I'd been plagued by injury in the 1 season and a half I'd had in Quins. Then 1.5 years in, I hadn't had so much as a broken toenail. So I stayed on the field for about 60 minutes with a broken foot, and it was very stupid because I apparently caused a lot more damage by staying on when I needed a surgery. But lo and behold, I was ruled out for the season. Quins did nosedive. They did much lesser. Their squad in general was a weaker squad that year, for the reasons I suggested. But then John Connolly, who tried to sign me back at 18 for Stade Francais, got the Bath job, and straight back onto me, as these things happen. It was like Harry Redknapp always wanted to sign Jermaine Defoe or Peter Crouch. John Connolly always wanted to sign me, and second time around I said I'm gone. I did go in and chat to Mark Evans, and I said, what if I hang around? I do love it here. And he said, well, we're about to sign Andrew Mertens, so on your bike.
Okay.
So I went to Bath, and as I said, it was probably not that short a story. In my first 4 games for Bath, it went really well, but John Connolly got the Australian job and left, and the new coach came in and sat me down and said, you're not in my plans. And that's something that literally on a flick of a coin can happen. And that was a very character building thing to go through, because I was the starting 10 with one coach. The new guy came in and said, you're not figuring. So that was actually the most formative period in my career, because Bath, effectively, the new coach didn't want me there, and I was on a 2-year contract, but there was no personal vendetta. He just didn't want me there. So I trained the house down, having gone through my 5 or 6 years of learning how to be a professional. And ironically, where I almost was like a ghost over in Bath, it didn't feature in the matchday squad regularly. I trained like a Spartan for about 8 months just to prove to myself that I could be a professional. And I think Leinster were keen to get me back at that stage. They'd Felipe, but they didn't have a whole lot of strength and depth in the position. So I came home.
Right,
But
okay.
that year where I was effectively a nobody and under the radar and not featuring in match day squads, and there are many members of many professional squads who do this as a career week in, week out. And that was one of my prouder moments or prouder periods, because it was relentless, tough training. I turned up, I showed up, I didn't complain, and that was an achievement for me. It showed to me a sense of resilience that I had developed over time that I didn't have at 18, maybe through to 21. So.
Right, okay. I guess, I mean, it does take time to mature and to figure out all these things. It's it's not very understandable as well. If we class it as the second half of the career, and I'm just so conscious clock is coming against me as I knew it would. That season at Leinster, Felipe's there before Johnny Sexton comes through, and then the 3 years at Connacht. Is that a happy period? Is that injury ravaged again, Andy, or how do you sum up that?
I know I quite enjoyed that period. The Leinster one was, I knew coming back I was going to, at that stage I'd probably become, for the likes of bigger clubs like Leinster, I certainly wasn't going to be a first choice marquee player for anyone at that stage. You're probably 26, 20, and you've been around 7 years in the professional game and not quite established yourself. So you take your medicine. I did want to keep playing, so I'm happy to be a squad member and try and contribute. And I did in that year, and I remember getting a drop goal in injury time to make sure we get into the quarters for Leinster against Agen. And that was a nice feeling, because really Leinster was my home club, and having come back from a tough year in Bath, I really enjoyed that. That felt like a nice little victory and a pinnacle for me with Leinster, but also for the team. It did cement, I think, progress into the knockout stages. So that was a nice feeling to be a part, to contribute in that sense. And then going down to Connacht was, I think, was a great fit for me at the time, because I was going down as a fellow who could start then hopefully every week and get regular rugby. And everyone gets fed up of being a backup at some stage. So it was nice, and I got a good season down there. We played South Africa a week before they went to the World Cup and won it in 2007 and almost scalped them. It would have been one of the greatest Connacht victories ever. We lost South Africa got a try in injury time. I think the score at the time was 8-3, and we were camped up on their line, and they got a very late breakaway try. I think Brian Habana or someone very, very fast scooted off up the field, and they snuck it. But they went on and won that World Cup. So we had quite a strong setup and a strong squad in Connacht, and Connacht became a rising force after that. So yeah, the tail end of the career was enjoyable in terms of regular rugby, but I think injury really and caught up with me. That at that stage I'd had 5 or 6 surgeries. I'd had a few knee surgeries as well, so I started to notice I was becoming slightly lame. I remember getting an intercept and getting chased down by, I thought it was a fullback, and when I watched the video back, it was a loose head prop that caught me, which really, really hurt the ego, because I was known at a younger age for being very fast. So yeah, the knee was starting to give way at that stage. Yeah.
You retired at 30, I know, and you went and did your physiotherapy qualifications, and you 10 years on, business is great, and you seem to be thriving. You never strike me, anytime I've ever talked to you, as in any way, woe is me, bitterness, nothing like that when you look back in your career. Deep down, late at night, if you're having a beer and sitting with yourself and you think about it, there must be some mixed emotions or some residual disappointment there, or how have you accommodated that?
No, I think there was residual disappointment. I remember going to I had got another knee injury, and it was that my last year in Connacht, and it was the week of St. Patrick's Week 2009, which is far more known in Irish rugby for the Grand Slam week. I was chatting with Michael Bradley and Eric Elwood, and they were, look, the knee's not great, is it? Contracts are up. Your contract is up. We are most likely not going to renew your contract. And at that stage, that was the end of my career. I think that happened on the Thursday. And there was no game that weekend. And I went up to Dublin and met up with my close friends. Didn't say a word to anyone, but we watched the Grand Slam and the Bleeding Horse, and I was having a few pints. And I remember kind of thinking, God, my career's over. And this is the pinnacle of Irish rugby for the last 61 years. And the vast majority of that team I played with. And I think I gave myself a couple of weeks of self-pity after that, because it hadn't worked out the way I liked or I dreamed. But in fact, you say 10 years later, when late at night when I'm sitting on the couch having a beer, I loved it. I loved every minute of it. I don't think I'd change a single disappointment. I wouldn't change an injury. It's actually given me the career I'm in now, and because I think I developed quite an interest in rehabilitation even as a result. So I think I'd be very, I look back with fondness even at the challenges, and I think there's a huge scope to learn from those things in life more so than successes. So yeah, there's genuinely no bitterness. I have a lot of fun memories as well. I was part of a era in rugby where we had some laugh. I mean, Jesus, we had great crack. I lived in London for 2 years as a 23, 24-year-old playing with World Cup winners and legends of the game. We won a Challenge Cup. I was part of a Leinster squad that had some of the game's greats. I played in Bath. I had chances to move around, lived in Galway for a couple of years, and all in my 20s, you know, it's kind of the stuff dreams are made of for many young sports people. So there genuinely isn't a sense of woe is me, because I got about 100 professional games of rugby. I took a few knocks, but sure, who doesn't, you know? And I made a lot of good friends out of it.
See, this is what I mean. You're so damn smart now. You're a philosopher.
Well, I'm reading a book at the moment that my brother gave me, and it's a lovely antidote to this incredibly boring post-match type interview you get from these very polished young players who are media trained. Sure. This is a book by a guy called Richard Esker, and it's about Jean-Pierre Rive, the famous French blindside flanker, and it's called Rugby and Art. And it's just all about his wild maverick lifestyle. And he's now a famous sculptor in France. He's got a studio down where he lives. I think he's very wealthy. His pieces sell. And it's one of the most refreshing things I've read. And he's certainly a rugby philosopher. And it's lovely to hear a rugby philosopher again, because there aren't many of them. There's a lot of people who'll say, you know, and think in a very non-thought-provoking way or in a bland way. And I do think that's an issue in modern professional rugby. There's not a huge amount of innovation on the field of play. And there's a lot of people who are very, I suppose they play by numbers and, you know, prescriptive play. And that's something that's always I've rallied against, even as a pundit. So it's nice to pontificate and be a philosopher when I've moved away from the game.
Well, listen, that was a great insight, as I knew it would be. So thanks so much for doing that. I know we nagged you into doing it, but it was great to talk to you about your career, because we hadn't really had that chat. So Andy Dunne, now of personal health as opposed to rugby player. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon, hopefully, about rugby.
Cheers, Joe.
We've got barbecue-ready favourites, like 4-pack Board B approved Irish beef burgers, just €2. 4-pack burger buns, €1. And strawberries, raspberries, blueberries and blackberries, only €2.